A woman walks into a police station in Paris. It's June 3rd, 1918. She's frantic, desperate. She tells the commissioner there are people in prison in her basement. Children, dozens of them, locked away, hidden. She demands police come with her, verify her story, free the captives. The police agree. They accompany her home. They search the basement. There's nothing. No prisoners. No children. No evidence of imprisonment. The police realize the truth. This woman isn't a rescuer. She's delusional. They don't take her home. They take her to hospital Saint Anne, a psychiatric facility, where she tells doctors something impossible, something terrifying. Her husband isn't her husband. He's an impostor, an identical duplicate. The real man was murdered, replaced. This stranger looks exactly like him, but isn't him. She knows. She's certain, and nothing will convince her otherwise. This is the story of Madame M, the first person diagnosed with Capgras syndrome, a delusion so bizarre it seems like science fiction, a condition where you recognize someone's face perfectly, but believe they're an imposter, a duplicate, a replacement. It sounds impossible, but it's real. It's documented, and it destroys families, ruins relationships, sometimes causes violence. Because when you believe your loved one is a fake, your real loved one stolen, what wouldn't you do to find the truth? Madame M was 53 years old in 1918. Born in Paris around 1865. She married at 29, had children, multiple children, but tragedy followed. Her first son died young, then twin girls. One survived, one perished, then twin boys. Both died in infancy. The grief changed her. Her husband noticed personality shifts. Jealousy emerged. Paranoia developed. She became obsessed with status, claimed royal lineage, insisted she was famous, wealthy, important. None of it was true. Then came the delusions about her husband. She announced he wasn't really him, that he'd been replaced by an impostor, a duplicate. She wanted a divorce from the impostor, not from her real husband, because her real husband was gone, murdered, hidden. This man wearing his face was a stranger. She counted 80 different duplicates, 80 men pretending to be her husband, all identical, all imposters, all trying to deceive her. Her surviving daughter wasn't safe either. Madame M believed her daughter had been replaced, substituted, abducted. The girl she saw daily wasn't her real child, just another impostor, another duplicate. Madame M could see them, these strangers, these fakes. She recognized their faces. They looked exactly like her family, but they felt wrong, different, hollow, empty, not real. In a psychiatric ward, Madame M was mostly calm, polite, cooperative, but when discussing her delusions, she became animated, talking rapidly, ideas flowing uncontrollably. She wrote constantly, coherently, documenting everything, every imposter, every replacement, every duplicate. She heard voices, children's voices, begging for help, crying out. She believed the children from her basement delusion, still trapped, still suffering, still needing rescue. Doctors examined her thoroughly, physically normal, except hyperreflexia, increased reflexes at the knees, not considered significant, but her mind was fractured, broken, operating under rules nobody else could see, rules that said familiar faces weren't really familiar, that identical appearances proved deception, that loved ones were enemies in disguise. Dr. Joseph Capgras was fascinated and horrified. Born in 1873 in southern France, trained in Toulouse, specialized in psychiatry. He'd never seen anything like Madame M. Neither had anyone. This wasn't schizophrenia. Not exactly. Not dementia. Not hysteria. This was something new. Something unnamed. Something that needed documentation. In 1923, Capgras and his assistant Jean Raboul-Lachaud published their paper. They called it L'illusion dissociés, the illusion of lookalikes, the illusion of doubles. Madame M's case was detailed, complete, revolutionary, because it identified something medicine hadn't recognized, a specific type of delusion, where recognition remains intact, but emotional connection severs completely. The syndrome wasn't named for Capgras immediately. That came later, as more cases emerged, as doctors recognized the pattern, the identical presentation. Patients who see familiar faces, recognize them visually, but feel nothing, no warmth, no connection, no emotional resonance, just cold recognition. visual without feeling. And that disconnect creates terror, creates certainty, creates the unshakable belief that this person, this thing, is an impostor. Tony Rosato discovered this terror in 2005. He was 50 years old, Canadian actor, comedian, famous in the 1980s. He'd been on SCTV, on Saturday Night Live, the voice of Luigi in Super Mario cartoons. Well-known, well-liked, successful career, happy marriage, or so it seemed, until one day in May 2005, when everything changed, when his brain broke, when his wife became a stranger. Tony had married Leah Murray. They had an infant daughter, a happy family, normal life. But Tony started noticing things, strange things. His wife seemed different, not quite right, acting oddly, looking the same, but feeling wrong. He tried to explain, tried to tell people. Nobody believed him. Nobody understood. So he went to police. Repeatedly, insistently. He filed complaints, many complaints, about his missing wife and daughter, about the imposters living in his home, about the conspiracy to replace his family. Police didn't find imposters. They found Leah, the real Leah. Terrified, she reported Tony's deteriorating mental health, his paranoia, his accusations, his harassment. She feared for her safety, for their daughter's safety. On May 5th, 2005, police arrested Tony, charged him with criminal harassment. He was confused, angry. He insisted his wife and daughter were missing, that these people were fakes, that everyone was lying, that he was the victim. Nobody believed him. Tony spent 2 years in jail, awaiting trial, without bail. 2 years, in a cell, believing his family was kidnapped, believing imposters walked free, believing everyone was conspiring against him. He maintained his innocence, insisted he'd done nothing wrong. How could reporting missing persons be a crime? How could seeking truth be harassment? He genuinely couldn't understand. His delusion was complete, total, unbreakable. Finally, psychiatrists evaluated him properly. They recognized something rare, something documented. Capgras syndrome, the delusion of doubles. Tony wasn't lying, wasn't faking, wasn't manipulating. His brain was broken, specifically broken, in a way that disconnected facial recognition from emotional response. He saw his wife's face, recognized it, but felt nothing. No love, no connection, no warmth, just visual data without emotion. And his brain concluded the only logical explanation: imposter, replacement, duplicate. The diagnosis changed everything. Criminal charges remained, but understanding emerged. Tony was committed to a mental institution, not prison, hospital, for treatment, for medication, for hope of recovery. He stayed until 2009, for years institutionalized, for a delusion he couldn't control, for a brain malfunction he didn't cause, for a syndrome nobody understood. He was released eventually, medication managed, symptoms controlled, but his marriage was destroyed. His relationship with his daughter fractured. His career finished. Capgras syndrome stole his life. Tony Rosato died January 10th, 2017. Heart attack, age 62. His obituaries mentioned his comedy, his characters, his voice work, and his tragedy. The rare delusion that destroyed him. The imposter syndrome that wasn't metaphorical. The medical condition that proved reality isn't objective. That perception can lie. That brains can betray, even when eyes see clearly. But Tony and Madam M aren't alone. Medical literature documents hundreds of cases. A woman named Mary, 40 years old, believed her 9-year-old daughter was replaced. Screamed at school, "Give me my real daughter." Child services intervened, took custody. The daughter said heartbreakingly, "I love my mother except when she doesn't believe I'm me." Mary refused supervised visits, wouldn't speak to the imposter. Medication failed. The delusion persisted. An 80-year-old man shot his father, killed him, because he believed his father was an imposter, a dangerous stranger, a threat. He saw his father's face, recognized it perfectly, but felt certain it was fake, that the real man was gone, that this was an enemy. So he eliminated the threat, murdered his own father, while believing he was protecting himself from a stranger. A woman attacked her mother with an axe, for the same reason, her mother's face, but wrong, different, hollow, an imposter wearing familiar features. Logic said eliminate the threat, find a real mother. save her from whatever happened. The attack was motivated by love, by a desperate need to rescue her real mother from a monster wearing her face. 8 cases documented in 1989, all involving violence or threats of violence toward alleged imposters, toward family members, toward loved ones transformed by delusion into enemies. The condition is dangerous, not just distressing, not just sad, genuinely dangerous, because patients act on their beliefs, protect themselves, eliminate threats, attack duplicates, all while targeting the people they love most. The neuroscience is fascinating and tragic. Research by Vilayana Ramachandran identified the mechanism. The brain has 2 recognition systems: visual recognition in the temporal cortex, emotional recognition in the limbic system, specifically the amygdala. Normally, these systems connect. Visual data triggers emotional response. You see mom, feel love. See spouse, feel warmth. See child, feel connection. The systems coordinate, work together, create complete recognition. In Capgras patients, the connection breaks. The pathway between temporal cortex and amygdala severs. Visual recognition works perfectly. They see the face, identify features, know who it should be. But the amygdala doesn't activate. No emotional response, no warmth, no love, just visual data. Cold, empty, meaningless. The brain receives contradictory information. Face says familiar. Emotion says stranger. Something's wrong, terribly wrong. The brain demands explanation, needs logic, needs coherence. 2 options exist: accept the contradiction, live with confusion, or find explanation. The brain chooses explanation, creates narrative. This person looks familiar, but feels wrong. Therefore, they're not the real person. They're a duplicate, an impostor, a replacement. The logic is perfect. The premise is broken, but the logic is flawless. Given the input, the conclusion makes sense. Studies measured emotional response using galvanic skin response, skin conductivity. Healthy people sweat more seeing familiar faces. Emotional arousal increases conductivity. Capgras patients show no increase. No emotional response. No arousal. Familiar faces generate nothing. Like seeing strangers. Like seeing objects. Visual data without feeling. The machines prove what patients experience. The emotional connection is genuinely absent. Not suppressed. Not ignored. Actually gone. Brain imaging shows the damage. Often frontal lobe involvement. Right temporal regions. Parietal areas. Parahippocampus damage. Amygdala disconnection. The specific locations vary, but the result is consistent. Facial recognition preserved. Emotional recognition destroyed. Connection severed. Patients aren't making it up, aren't exaggerating. Their brains actually work this way, process faces this way, generate these experiences. These terrifying, isolating, relationship-destroying experiences. Capgras occurs in multiple conditions. Schizophrenia most commonly, particularly paranoid schizophrenia, where existing paranoia combines with imposter beliefs, creating perfect storm. Everyone's suspicious, everyone's dangerous, everyone's fake. Also Lewy body dementia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease with dementia, stroke patients, brain injury survivors, anyone with damage to the recognition, emotional connection pathways. The specific disease matters less than the location, than the disconnection, than the break between seeing and feeling. Treatment is difficult. Antipsychotics sometimes help by reducing overall delusional thinking, by dampening paranoia, by sedating overactive brain regions. But they rarely eliminate the delusion completely. It's too fundamental, too logical, too based on actual perception. You can't argue someone out of their sensory experience. Can't convince them their feelings are wrong, because their feelings are accurate. They genuinely don't feel connection, don't feel warmth, don't feel love. The emotional absence is real. Only the explanation is delusional. Families suffer immensely. Imagine being told you're not you, by your spouse, your parent, your child. Imagine them looking at you with suspicion, fear, hatred. Imagine being rejected by someone you love, not because of who you are, but because they can't feel who you are. Their brain won't let them. You look exactly the same, sound exactly the same, but to them you're a stranger, an enemy, a threat, and nothing you say, nothing you do, Nothing you prove will convince them otherwise. The daughter told social services, "I love my mother except when she doesn't believe on me." That sentence captures the agony, the impossibility, the heartbreak. She loved her mother. Her mother loved her. But her mother's brain couldn't recognize that love, couldn't feel that love, couldn't connect face to feeling. So the mother saw an impostor, and the daughter saw her mother loving someone who didn't exist, while rejecting the person standing right there, right in front of her, looking exactly like her real daughter, being her real daughter, but invisible to recognition, invisible to love. Capgras syndrome proves something profound. That recognition isn't simple. That identity isn't obvious. That knowing someone isn't just visual. It's emotional. It's felt. It's experienced holistically. When that holistic experience breaks, when vision and emotion disconnect, identity becomes impossible. You can see someone, identify their face, list their features, and still not recognize them, still not know them, still believe there's someone else entirely. Madam M died in the psychiatric hospital, years after admission, still believing in imposters, still seeing duplicates, still counting replacements. She never recovered, never reconnected, never felt that emotional warmth, that recognition completion, that sense of genuine familiar presence. She lived surrounded by strangers wearing familiar faces, died believing her real family was stolen, replaced, hidden somewhere, forever out of reach. Tony Rosato got treatment, got medication, got release, but lost his family, lost his daughter's trust, lost years of life, lost his marriage, lost his career, all to a syndrome he couldn't control, all to a disconnection he didn't cause, all to a brain malfunction that medicine barely understands. He died at 62, heart attack, but perhaps heartbreak, from losing family, not to death, not to distance, but to a delusion, to an impossible belief, to a syndrome that said the people he loved most weren't really them, were never really them, would never really be them again. The woman who thought everyone was an imposter, the man who lost his family to duplicates, the mother who couldn't recognize her daughter, the patients who attacked the strangers wearing loved ones' faces. They all share one thing, a broken connection between seeing and feeling, between recognition and emotion, between face and warmth. That connection, that integration, that automatic emotional response to familiar faces is something most people never think about, never appreciate, never realize they have, until it's gone, until the faces remain, but the feelings vanish, until you see your spouse, your parent, your child, and feel nothing, nothing but certainty, that whoever this is, wearing that familiar face, isn't really them, could never be them, can only be an imposter, a duplicate, a replacement, and the real person, the real loved one, they're gone, forever, stolen, hidden, lost, while identical strangers stand in their place, looking right, sounding right, but feeling impossibly, terrifyingly, completely wrong.